Magavana Melon. So in this video I'm going to discuss the next dimension, which is the first dimension after the Big Bang, after the big expansion from God. We had the first dimension. And when you go into physics, you learn that first dimension is really just length, and it is a line. So it is the linear point from one point to another, and it is length. So when you actually think about it, the first dimension is related to the idea of in the beginning during Genesis time, and this follows also in the Quran and in other world religions. There's always a point of after one creation starts to birth this life and new creation and planets and everything, what happens is there's a time period and a time of evolution, of solidifying all of the elements into their states of matter that then can contain life. So if you think about it in a scientific way, the idea about the Big Bang, so we had this explosion of potential energy stored, very, very hot, extremely hot, can't even imagine type of energy that exploded outward into space. And then we had parts of it actually start to cool down and to solidify and to turn into planets all over the universe. And there are so many planets, and there are stars that were created in order to sustain the life on the planet. So the stars stayed hot, they had their hot gases stay, and then you have the planets that started to cool down and make life more susceptible to be able to grow there. Now, some planets just never reach that point, or we just don't know what kind of life can survive in those types of environments. So the first dimension is coming from the zero point of singularity into the line of time, or not time, but length and distance. So it is starting a timeline. Literally, the first dimension is a number line. So it is the point where the creation started to present a storyline or a timeline in its mind, in its awareness and knowledge of what it wanted to see with creation. And then that's when all the planets started to cool and we started to get the conditions for life to be created. Now, looking at first dimension, if you understand that the root chakra is the first chakra, then that can show you how it correlates to the human body as well. That the first dimension is the root chakra. That is really just survival and feeling like you're really, you're manifested into the reality and you're actually here. You actually exist and you're grounded and you have your roots. And this is the start of creation. So in terms of society, a living advanced society is not in first dimension. What's in first dimension is really just the elements only. So the rocks, and really just the rocks, and the elements that are not yet combined to make life. They're simple elements. They're not compound elements at all. So that really is the first dimension. And that's when I was talking about it in the other video of how from zero dimension everything explodes outward, and then that's what starts the progress of life and evolution, and a spiritual and a mental evolution of life. So first dimension is just length and distance, and that is also noted in the divine texts as talking about the different ages and eons that it took in order to create a sustainable place for life. And you know, the Bible talks about it being 7 days, the Quran talks about it being 7 days. I believe that this is all relative to God. So to us, it would be far longer than 7 days. It would not be 7 days. But to God, that is above and beyond time, it can only be expressed on a physical level in our physical language as equating to 7 days, but really it's almost like 7 eons or 7 ages. So you know, it takes time for planets to cool, for elements to 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 manifest themselves into the forms that we have, such as mountains. And you know, we have the mountains that were created, and then you know they separated, and then you had the, you know, the cradle for water, because water is needed for life, and the particular life of humans, they need water and they need air. So they needed to have all those elements. They needed to have water, they needed to have air in order to survive. So that is the first dimension of thought coming from the creator, and it is why society is not able to, life is not, human life and alien life is not in the first dimension. All that's in the first dimension is matter, very simple forms of matter and elements, and that is it. So there's really not much more to talk about, because we don't have the ability to go into the human consciousness level in regards to the first dimension, because human consciousness and extraterrestrial consciousness is not in that first dimension, because all that exists in that first dimension is the timeline that is being established by the creator. So I hope that that helped you kind of visualize a little bit about what happens after 0 dimension and then turning into the first dimension. And my next video will be about the second dimension. So, Hen and Lei for listening, and I will see you on the next video.